All right, we've covered a ton of ground so far this morning. Everything from the spy balloon overhead in the northern part of the United States to the issue of your Second Amendment rights in Illinois courts. And I want to hear from you at 217-629-7970. That's the phone number here. We also talked about the issue of COVID-19 and that it's been almost 3 years now of consecutive executive orders and not much being done to curb executive authority. So interesting to see that play out. But let's open up the phone lines for you to sound off on any of these issues that we've talked about, or maybe something that we haven't yet to get to. 217-629-7970. That's the phone number here with Springfield's Morning News, now 745, live and local. You can also reach out to me, bishoponair@gmail.com, or you can find me on social media. Just search Bishop on Air, and we can connect that way. So some of the latest about the gun litigation, of course, is that the White County judge issuing a temporary restraining order against the state, restraining them from actually enforcing the law against 1,690 plaintiffs, and that includes several state lawmakers and dozens of gun dealers. What does that mean exactly? That means those individuals can freely go and exercise their Second Amendment rights and purchase and acquire at gun stores the guns that they want to purchase, semi-automatic guns. And it can be an AR-15. It can be a 30-round magazine. It can be, a 20-round handgun magazine as well if they wanted to do that. So it's something that obviously is impacting a lot of those issues when it comes to the Second Amendment, and something that very much is important to a lot of people because they sued. So you've got the White County case, you've got the Effingham County case where a TRO was issued, and then the state appealed that in the Fifth Circuit Appellate Courts. They upheld the issue of the law. They say very likely they could advance and win on the issue of the Equal Protections Clause, which is you can't suspend somebody's rights while giving others their rights. You have to meet strict scrutiny to be able to do that. But it's not just there that the equal protections issue is raised. You've also got the issue of the 3 readings rule. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize how the system at the Illinois State House has been operated by how certain legislation gets passed. And it seems to always be at the tail end of a session, either spring session when it comes to the budget, either fall veto session when it comes to, say, things like the Safety Act revisions, or when it comes to things like in lame duck session, which we've recently seen when it comes to the state's gun ban. These things are pushed through in a very last-minute efforts where the pressure campaign tends to build quite a bit. So I think that's these issues of the procedural processes, even the White County judge saying that this seems to be a complete violation. Let me see if I can pull up exactly what he had to say here, because I think it's important. He went on to say that the court views the actions of the legislature a blatant violation of the 3 readings requirements to the Illinois Constitution. However, in light of the 5th District Appellate Court's recent opinion of the same question, this court lacks the authority to decide that. So obviously something that is very much going to be determined by a higher court somewhere. How is the Illinois Supreme Court going to deal with this issue? So a lot of moving pieces, and those are just the state level questions. You've got other lawsuits in federal court that are still pending. And don't forget about the lawsuit that's going to be heard in Macon County today, just down the street in Decatur. I'm going to head over there this afternoon where State Representative Dan Calkins has his challenge of the state's gun ban. So a lot of moving pieces in state court, a lot of moving pieces in federal court, and that's just all about the state's gun ban. That has nothing to do with the challenge that's still pending about the firearm owner identification card. That has nothing to do with the Maryland assault weapons ban that's being challenged in federal court over in Maryland. That has nothing to do with what's happening in California. So there's a lot of things going on when it comes to the Second Amendment, and we'll be monitoring it all here on WMAY and touching on a whole host of other things, including, has anybody seen the spy balloon overhead? 217-629-7970. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
What I don't understand is how the judge didn't throw it out for the entire state. I mean, on its face, it creates two classes of people.
Well, because it's a temporary restraining order, right? So, I mean, we're not to the point of getting permanent injunctive relief, which would be statewide. Now, they're seeking that in federal court, and they may be able to secure that soon in federal court. They just have to have the hearing scheduled in front of a judge. But in the state court, the request was for an immediate temporary restraining order, which is a temporary issue while they deal with the substantive questions that could lead to a permanent injunction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I will patiently await their justification for creating subclasses of people. I mean, the people that own the guns before the ban have more rights or have access to weapons that people who maybe weren't of age or just hadn't been able to purchase them after the ban. So, I mean, just on its face alone, it creates a subclass of citizenry, and I just don't understand how they're going to justify that.
Well, the way the state has tried to justify that is they've said that you've got those who are in law enforcement, retired, or those who are in the security sector, they get training with guns. So that's why the state says that's why they're carved out of this. But
no, but I'm also.
But everybody else hasn't. They don't have access to that training. That was the argument that was brought up in court, and DeVore and his co-counsel bringing that up in the Effingham and the White County case, saying, "Listen, Joe Schmo over here has the same ability to access the training that the law enforcement agency can access. So there's no rationale to say that the law enforcement guy can have access to these guns, but Joe Schmo can't." And I think the court's sided with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's much bigger than that. I mean, if my neighbor doesn't own an AR and I do, he has less rights than I have. I mean, that's just on its face. That's a true statement. And I don't have the proper military or police training that they're even arguing. I think the argument can be taken even further that we have less rights than our neighboring states. We have less rights than those who purchased the weapons before the ban that still get to keep them. I mean, it's amazing to me how this is even made it 30 days or how many ever days it's been as a law. It wasn't thrown out immediately.
Well, it looks like things are starting to stack up to see the outcomes of these challenges. And again, just state level court right now. We got federal level court as well. So a lot of things moving around. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Yeah, you just mentioned federal court. Good morning, Greg. Sorry.
Good morning. No sweat.
You just mentioned the federal court, and I think the lawsuit to follow is going to be the one that's filed by the Illinois State Rifle Association. I'm for all these lawsuits, but the issue I have now, I just heard you say this morning, or I heard DeVore say this morning, he's going to subpoena everyone.
Yeah.
In the House and Senate. I mean, you just lost
and
him.
the governor.
That's craziness. It's not going to happen. It's craziness, and he just lost all credibility. So, I mean, stay by the Illinois State Rifle Association is all I can say to people.
Well, and again, that's in federal court. Divorce case is in state court. Divorce case raises totally different issues on a state level than what the Illinois State Rifle Association's raised on the federal lawsuit. What DeVore's after is he wants to get a record, he says, of how this was passed. And he's really going after not just the issue of equal protection, but also the issue of the 3 readings violation, the issue of the due process and the single subject violations that he alleges. Right. And that's something that's not just going to address this particular law, but other things moving forward.
Can the legislature then ask a judge why he made a ruling and subpoena all the judges' records? I mean,
no, I don't think so. No, it's not how it works. Separation of powers there. You've got 3 branches of government. The legislative branch passes laws, the executive branch executes those laws, and the judicial branch is supposed to keep track and be that equal branch to be a check and balance of all of them. So good morning. You're on WMAY. Your thoughts real quick, please.
Good morning. I appreciate the definition of government there. When is the conversation going to change away from the gun control and the other legislation they've passed with zero input and zero care as to what Southern Illinois thinks, and we're we just going to separate and go our own way.
So you want to see new Illinois take place?
51st.
Yeah, that's going to be a long, long time coming, if it does come at all. It's a laborious process, and maybe we talk about that some in the future. I appreciate the call, but I got to take a break. It is Springfield's Morning News on WMAY.
There are 3 words I always hear when